According to OECD international testing, Australian students were lagging seriously behind their peers in other developed countries when it comes to mathematics. Are you a math genius? Do you like it? We're about to be joined by someone who will appear on Australian Story tonight, but also arguably the most famous maths teacher in Australia. It's a very good morning to Mr. Eddie Wu. Hi, Eddie.
Good morning, Ali. It's great to be here with you.
Your maths journey, you didn't really like it as a kid, did you, to start with?
No, it certainly wasn't a natural thing for me. I loved English and history. I loved writing things and stories. That was sort of my natural language. But mathematics was kind of always there and I didn't mind it, but certainly it wasn't my favourite subject to begin with.
So then how did you go from there to where you are now? People from all over the country, even all over the world, coming to you for maths lessons.
Look, it was a very sliding doors moment, to be honest. I was standing in line at the Faculty of Education at Sydney University on enrolment day, and I had there in my hands my enrolment form to become a student in the Bachelor of Education, Bachelor of Arts combined degree, and I had on the form, English and history as my teaching areas. And I was standing there sort of just looking up and down my paperwork when the Associate Dean of the Faculty of Education walked by, and he just plucked my academic transcript out of my hand, looked at my form, looked at me, and without any more of a word, he said, "You should be a maths teacher." And he spent the next 20 minutes explaining to me how we have this acute shortage of trained, passionate mathematics teachers, which still hasn't changed today. We still have that shortage. And for me, I always wanted to go into teaching because I want to make a difference to children's lives. I mean, I enjoy my subject, but for me, it's about students and it's about people. And you know what? Give me any subject and I'll teach that. So I wanted to be where I could be most useful, and that happens to be mathematics right now.
Will you say right now? Does that mean that you would eventually like to return to maybe that first basic love of the humanities?
Well, I think I've found myself rather entrenched in this world, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I guess I would say that I actually bring a lot of my love for a story and narrative and theatricality to the way that I teach mathematics. And I think that resonates with the students too.
Okay, so tell me about WooTube, which I love, by the way.
It was actually a joke told by because students always come up with the best ones. This was years and years ago before I started doing this, and someone said to me in my roll call class, year 10 boy, he said, "Hey sir, wouldn't it be really funny if you started a YouTube channel and you called it WooTube?" And, of course, being an adolescent boy said it exactly like that.
Yeah.
And, we all had a good laugh, and then when I started doing this, I couldn't think of a better name, and now it's stuck. So where it started was that I had a student who was very, very ill. He was diagnosed with cancer, in fact. And, cancer is a life-changing reality for anyone, let alone a 16-year-old boy. And all of a sudden, his life was just turned upside down. He couldn't be at school for weeks and weeks at a time. Often within a term, we'd see him for 2 or 3 weeks, and then he'd be just gone. And it's difficult to go through life under circumstances like that. But I remember when my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school, one of the things that you most want as a person who's sick or affected by sickness, you just want to feel normal. You don't want to be singled out and pointed at and like, oh, there's the kid who's sick, or there's the kid who has all these family issues. And this boy, he just wanted to keep on learning with us and have that part of his life still be normal and something where he could excel because he was really good at the subject. And so because he couldn't be in class, I took my phone, I propped it up on the table, and I just hit record. And they weren't very good because it was pretty shoddy quality back then, but you could see the whiteboard, you could hear my voice, and that's where it began. I put them online because that was just the easiest way to get them to him, and it didn't take long for other people to take notice.
Well, you say that. I mean, when did you realise that a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, were tuning in for your math lessons?
When one of my students came to me one afternoon, it was that same year, and they said, "Oh, sir, I met my friend from this other school," and she said, "Hey, do you know this Mr. Wu guy?" And it slowly dawned on me and her that there were other teachers around who discovered the videos and they were showing them to their students, and it's just kind of spreading from there. That was a weird moment. I think probably the first moment when I was I think, honestly, I was at the butcher buying some chicken wings, and the person handing me the meat sort of gave it to me, put it in my hand, and then sort of gave me this sideways look and said, "Do you teach maths by any chance?" And that was when I thought, okay, this is sort of become something else. But every time it's still weird because I'm just an ordinary teacher doing my ordinary thing in class every day, and the videos are just a window to that. That's all.
Well, inquiring minds want to know, you're a man of figures, being, a mathematics teacher. Are you making any money out of it at all?
Oh, look, I'm not. I mean, one of the things for me is that I've received an education for free. I mean, I went to public schools my entire life. And honestly, if a student at home is going to spend the time and take the initiative to go and look up videos on maths to learn and study in their own time, the last thing I want to do is put a pre-roll ad in front of them and put an obstacle to their learning. So for me, this is not about, getting an income. It's about spreading learning. And I've just been so privileged to receive a great education myself. I really want to pay it forward to the next generation.
It's 18 minutes to 10, and Eddie Wu, who is Head of Mathematics at Cherrybrook Technology High School in Sydney, is actually going to be the subject of Australian Story tonight, but we're speaking to him now. This is after he set up his freely accessible website, WooTube, to help a student who had cancer and has become an internet sensation as teaching people all around this country and also the world. I mean, is it a great example, Eddie, that the nature of great teaching doesn't mean that proximity has to be someone right in front of you giving that lecture style, explanation?
Look, it's been amazing for technology to open so many doors. I've been really privileged to get in touch with people from around the state. Some of the people who you'll hear on the episode tonight are people I've never met, but they're in rural and remote areas. And because technology opens all these doors, it's just brilliant that they have access to something which otherwise would be almost impossible for them to get. And for that to even go, around the world and to people, not just in schools. I've gotten comments and emails from people who have long left high school or any kind of formal education and are realizing, actually, I never really got this back in the day, but it's great to be able to have someone explain it to me in a way that I understand. I got a Christmas card last year from a 50-year-old dentist, and he wrote this email, this card to me to say, this concept, I've never heard it explained it before in such a clear way, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you to someone who obviously went to school 35 years ago, but is still willing to learn, and I love that.
Now, when you do all your filming for WooTube, for example, Mia's asking, do you actually film in the classroom? Because here in South Australia, teachers aren't allowed any recording devices in the classroom, or do you do this separately?
I do this in the classroom. I mean, it's worth pointing out that what I do is I just use an iPad on top of a tripod in the middle of my classroom, and I do angle it so that all you can see is the whiteboard and me. You can hear my students' voices, which is important because most of my lessons are me talking back and forth with them. It wouldn't make much sense if you could only hear me, but you never see them on camera unless it's something special that they've signed permission for. And, for me, it's all about just providing access to that explanation and making sure it's done in a way that's sensitive to their needs. So it's done live. I've 3 young children and all these other kinds of responsibilities as a head of department, so I don't have the time to pre-record or post-record stuff. So it's the live experience.
So what do your students think? Well, I mean, you talk about setting that iPad up, etc. I mean, what do they think that Mr. Wu is doing that, and not only that, is going to be on something like Australian Story, and they're making a fuss of their teacher?
Look, I think it's pretty funny for them. A lot of them, the first time that they see me set it up, maybe the first couple of times, they're like, this is a bit weird. I think I'm going to relocate to another part of the classroom that's a little further away from all of this gear. But very quickly, they normalize to it. I mean, we shouldn't be that surprised. I think that this generation of children coming through, they're the self-broadcasting generation. They walk out of my classroom and they take 5 selfies before they get to the canteen line. So I guess that aspect of the technology is not that weird for them. But I do think, it's quite charming for some of them that they recognize, what, teaching's important work. Teachers don't get heaps of status or pay in this country. And so for them to recognize, oh, yeah, what, educators are worth putting on a show like that. I think it's been a pleasant surprise for a lot of them.
You sound so positive, Eddie. Well, you sound like you're just continually moving forward and kicking these great goals and doing these great initiatives. Do you ever have rough days or rough students?
Teachers have rough days all the time. I mean, I have a At our school, we have 6 periods in the day that we can teach, and sometimes I'll teach a class before school. And if I've got 7 periods in a row, I can guarantee you some of those will be great and some will be ordinary. And, one of the great things about being in a public school, in a comprehensive school, is that we get the whole range of students. So we get students who are academic stars, who are just sort of, they're the kinds of kids who you hope they're not going to ask you a question because they're so bright you probably can't answer their question. And at the same time, you've got kids who come from a background of disadvantage, or maybe they don't have heaps of support at home, or they have gaps in their learning. And it's a privilege to take those kids and be able to say, look, I'm going to take you to the next spot where you need to be learning, wherever you are coming from, whatever gaps you might have. My role is to bring you forward, to be able to increase your confidence in being able to do things and be able to go out into the world, solve problems. And that's, it's exciting. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, teaching is hard. There are long hours. I know people say 9 to 3, but I don't know any good teacher who works from 9 to 3. We do lots of preparation beforehand and lots of marking and reports afterwards. But it's worth it because you can see the difference that it makes in children's lives every day. And you, even if you're lucky, get to have students come back to you years later and they say, oh, sir, I always gave you a hard time, but now I'm doing this. I'm in the finance world. I'm a successful plumber. I'm a whatever it might happen to be, and that's just endlessly exciting to me. I mean, I have every reason to be positive about the work that I do. It's a great privilege.
So then, Eddie Wu, where are we going wrong? Why do you think we are lagging so far behind in all of this international testing, other developed countries, when it comes to mathematics?
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd probably say is that it's difficult to make broad and sweeping statements on things like the TIMSS or PISA reports. Firstly, because I'm not a trained statistician, so I'm speaking from my experience in the classroom. But also, I know from having looked at these documents myself, there's a huge amount of complexity in these documents and, things that it's difficult to take into account, diversity and what have you. I'll give you an example. Lots of comparisons have been made with countries like, say, Finland, and their amazing education systems. And there's certainly things that we have to learn from there. But the Finnish education system versus our education system, I mean, our societies are completely different in terms of the diversity of the students that we have in our classrooms. And so it's very difficult to make comparisons. But I'd probably say maybe 2 things that I can think of for areas that we need to work on. The first thing is that it's become sort of popular and almost something that you can have with pride to say, I never understood maths when I was at school, and I was kind of fine. And the thing is, when we say that, whenever I hear that said, I can hear the pin drop in a student's mind when they realize, oh, you know what? That means I can just sort of leave this behind and not put myself through the rigors of trying to understand this because it's too hard and I'll be fine anyway. Gives
them an out. Yeah,
okay. That's right. And so there's a real cultural shift that I think that needs to happen because the truth is mathematics is for everyone. I mean, not everyone's going to climb Mount Everest. Not everyone is a superstar mathematician, but we can all enjoy the climb. I mentioned before, maths was not my strong suit at school, but I spent lots of time trying to wrap my head around it. I haven't given up. And for me, one of the major things that I want to teach my students, that I want to convey to them and to my own children, is that if something isn't easy, well, you persevere and you don't give up. Like, that's a life lesson. That's not a maths lesson. So I think that, that cultural angle and also the willingness of students to be able to say, you know what, just like JFK said when he was trying to inspire a nation to come together in the middle of the Cold War, he said, we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And for students to want to do something challenging, I mean, children of all ages throughout, for centuries have always wanted to take the easy path, but we want to encourage them to actually set your eyes on something higher. And mathematics, numeracy, patterns, shapes, they're an important thing in our society today that everyone needs to wrap their head around. So I think if we can help kids understand that, they'll really give maths a go.
Well, Eddie Wu, it's been delightful listening to you. Jenny from Port Lincoln, for example, says, congratulations, Mr. Wu. You're inspiring as a retired teacher. I'm delighted the profession is in such good hands. So thank you. All the very best and look forward to seeing you tonight on Australian Storing and channeling Mr. Wu, which will be on from 8 o'clock on ABC and ABC iView. Thanks so much, Eddie.
It's a pleasure, Ali. Thank you.